All right. Well, that's definitely some good momentum to start our webinar today. When the tech works, we all have a good feeling. So at 1 after the hour, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. So I just have a few intro remarks here from APA, and then I'll turn it over to our partner for today. So welcome everyone to today's webinar entitled 200 plus years of energy wisdom, lessons from the pros who've seen it all. Today's webinar is in partnership with EnergyCap. My name is Erica Baum, and I am APA's administrative coordinator. Just a couple of notes and reminders, like I mentioned before we get started here, we will be posting this webinar recording to the APA webpage under the Professional Development tab within 24 hours, as well as on APA's Vimeo channel. So if you'd like to rewatch or forward to someone who missed it, please feel free to do that. This webinar does qualify you for 1 professional development hour, and credits will automatically be uploaded to your Member Compass account transcripts. All attendees, as you probably guessed, are in listen-only mode, but feel free to use that chat window or the Q&A window. We'll keep an eye on those things throughout the presentation. Probably won't be doing a whole lot of real-time Q&A, but if we have some that come in throughout the presentation, we'll save them till the end and try to get to as many as we can, and hopefully all of them. So thanks again for being here today. We've got a really exciting panel, something kind of different than we normally do for our webinars. So with that, I will turn it over for the rest of our introductions to John Hines of EnergyCap.
Yeah, thank you so much. And very excited to be here today and appreciate everyone for dialing in. This webinar was a bit of a brainstorm that we said, how do we get a number of energy professionals that have been in the space a long, long time together and just talk about their experience and one of the goals being embarking words of wisdom to all of you. And I was, the one that said, "Hey, let me see in my network who I could get to join on this webinar." And I'm so thankful that I didn't get any no's from this group. And I'm really excited to be, here with all of them. Now, a little bit about a bit of a background on myself. VP on the sales team here at EnergyCap. EnergyCap, we or a SaaS business. We develop utility management software. We've been doing this for over 45 years at this point. So we've been in the space a long, long time. I am only celebrating a 20-year career this past year. The folks that I have asked to join this have many, many more years of experience, but I've had the pleasure of working with all of them in the past. And not just for a little while. I've known the four of them for a long, long time. So I thought it really fun and exciting to bring them all together and just to talk shop. So that's what we're here to do today. So let me go ahead and introduce our panelists. And I'm going to have you all introduce yourself. So Bill, why don't you verbally introduce yourself?
Okay, hi, my name is Bill Younger. I have been in the business for, well, you stop counting after 30, 35 years. You don't want to know. Don't do the math on how we got to 200, but I started off in working for two state energy offices in Montana and Washington State, doing institutional conservation programs and creating training programs for commercial building operators. Did a short stint at Enron, of all things, which was very entertaining. Left about a year before it came crashing down because it was getting kind of strange, and then went to work for Puget Sound Energy, which is a real utility company in the Pacific Northwest. And there I created a program called a Resource Conservation Program, working with operational and behavioral measures with commercial building operators and people working in the buildings and everything, which was very successful and still carries on to this day. And then went on to manage the commercial industrial energy efficiency programs. And after that, went to work for a national program implementer called Clear Result, where I created programs that they offered nationally to utility companies. And then I retired after that.
Yeah, right. So great history there. Really appreciate the experience. Let's go next to Heidi.
Yeah, hi, Heidi Mecklenburg from Colorado State University. I've been in this job for 33 years. I actually started as a student a few years before that because I had experience with Phaser, which was a long ago, first iteration of EnergyCap, and went through the Enron days and that was kind of painful, but have been working with Energy Cap for a very long time. But I do the utility budget for the university. We work on sustainable energy, and our greenhouse gas footprint was at the cusp of helping develop that particular footprint at the very beginning. And now we're into STARS reporting, and anything about utility bills or billing, I'm the person that's doing. And I'm planning on retiring in May, so I'm handing this off to my successor and training him at this point in time.
Yes, and so Bill retired, Heidi soon to be retired.
Yep.
Also with a very illustrious career in energy management.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to you next, Michael.
Okay, all right, Michael Reynolds. Well, I'm an electrical engineer by education, and started out working for Motorola, developing radios, two-way radios. But got into developing two-way or radio-based utility metering products. And then I too went to Enron, and then ended up in State College working with Energy Cap, and that's how I got to become very familiar with it. After that, I went on to build multiple utility bill service bureaus, one using Energy Cap, and currently I'm in the water and utility submetering and tenant billing business as a VP of sales.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And let's close it out with Joyce.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Joyce Parton. I serve as principal at Parton Service Group. We are located as a business management consulting firm here in Cleveland, Ohio. I've had over 35 years, like Bill, I hate to admit it at this point in time, but 35 years of experience in both supply and demand side strategies. I have worked in various industries such as real estate for utility companies, the government, nonprofit, home repair, and in manufacturing. So wherever you go, you could find something to do in the energy field. So looking forward to being on this panel today.
Yeah, that's great. And hopefully everyone caught the vast experience here. We have experience at the state level, working for utilities, working for consultants, working higher ed, service bureaus, metering company, commercial real estate, just a really wide variety of experience with this group. And that's really why I had asked them to join today. I thought it was just a well-rounded group, a lot of different verticals and industries, but the commonality being solving problems by managing energy. So before we get into too much, we wanted to ask you all. We have a poll out there, and we should be bringing up the poll. We would like to hear from you. You heard about all of our experience. I'm the young pup on the call with 20 plus years in this industry, but we would just like to know from our attendees, how many years have you been in the energy management or energy space? If you could go and check that would be really helpful. And someone let me know when we have a good group here, and we'll end the poll. But please just fill in your experience. We're just curious to know how many years in total. And then, hey, Bill, we could start doing the math of saying how many years in total everyone that was part of this webinar has experience. And no one can question our math. All right, let's see. 19% of you 1 year or less. All right.
Wow.
Well, welcome to the industry.
Yeah.
And I bet many of you didn't start your career wanting to be in this industry necessarily. A lot of people have found their way into this industry just because it's exciting and very much a growing industry. 24% 2 to 4 years. So what's that? Almost half under 4 years. And then we have 16% 5 to 10 years, 27% 11 to 20 years. So some serious veterans out there. And then 14% really in the category of many of us, which is this is our career. This is what we've been doing. Really interesting to see that. I very much appreciate this. And for you veterans, I think everything you'll hear today will resonate with you. For those that are younger, please break out a pencil and a piece of paper and start to take notes. Our job is to embark words of wisdom and know-hows. So let's get into it. I want to ask the question, and I'm going to start this one with Heidi. Just just looking back across your career, because you're about to retire, um, just what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years?
Um, Change is inevitable and constant. Um, when you get things figured out, something new comes along. We're dealing with renewable energy and how to incorporate that. We're a master metered environment, so we have to figure out how to incorporate these renewables in our sub-metering environment. And because of building performance standards, they don't care where the energy is from the grid or from a renewable source. We have to add that back in. So we're constantly trying to figure it out and figure out best ways to present the data, report the data, pick it apart, piece it back together. We're going to have geo exchange. We have geo exchange. We're probably going to expand on that. We're probably going to convert from steam to hot water. So there's just a constant level of change, at least on the campus environment where we have things master metered. It may not be that way in a more static environment, but we're building new buildings, we're tearing down buildings, we're reconfiguring a system. And so that get comfortable with change because it's not going away anytime soon, and develop processes that are flexible and nimble to accommodate change.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Bill, you worked on the utility side.
Uh, yeah.
Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I just,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
things,
yeah.
when I thought about it, it was an interesting question. So I look back and it's like, okay, on the energy professional thing, everything you learned, there was really no shortcuts to it. It's what makes you who you are, of learning and being exposed to different things. Don't be afraid to try things. And sometimes they work better than others, but that's what makes you an individual in this business and builds your reputation. One example of learning energy economics, for instance, we all suffered through that, and energy economics calculations and formulas and all that kind of stuff. So the best way to learn that stuff, I found out, was being put in a position to have to teach someone. When you have to teach someone, you don't want to look like an idiot. And so it forces you to learn it really well. And one thing for you younger people in there, in learning about the time value of money, assuming you folks that have been there less than 5 years are younger, open up a Roth IRA. When you do the calculations using those same formulas, the power of time is your biggest asset right now. So that's it for me, John.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Well, the eighth wonder of the world, the law of compounding, right?
Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah. And how are some of the utilities providing resources to for customers, in the aspect of renewables?
On the renewable side of things,
Yeah.
not so much. I generally worked on the customer side of the meter. So the renewables programs like solar and things like that came and went, a long time, and they fluctuated more than anything else. The utilities side were better at doing just mainly retrofits to the customer side of the meter on HVAC equipment and lighting and that sort of stuff, and have a lot of resources to help customers figure those things out. So don't be afraid to ask them and approach them, even if you don't see a program that does what you need.
Yeah, yeah, very helpful. Joyce, how about you? What are some of the lessons learned that you want to share?
Sure, thank you. So I, except for about 4 years of my career, I never worked for a company where energy was their primary business. I was usually the designated energy manager, and we were, doing something else. So the lesson I learned the hard way was that no one was going to be as excited about my role as I was. And I had to kind of bring people along the curve to, a lot of meeting before the meeting when we were going to get together and talk about things like the energy budget or our procurement strategy. And often I felt very isolated. I'd go to conferences and so forth just so I could be with people that really understood what I did for a living. So temper expectations was one of the lessons I learned.
Yeah. How did you get some of your other team members excited about energy?
Um, I, when you're dealing with the great energy data that Energy Cap provides, you have to put it in their terms. So I would usually not talk about just, dollars per MCF or something like that. But say when I was at Goodyear, we would talk about dollars per tire pound produced. And then when you start to work it into the actual product of your organization, people would relate more to how important it was.
Yeah, very good words there. You know, if I say it another way, it's find the KPI that is meaningful to the organization that they can get around, and it might not be kilowatt hours. In fact, many of you probably have to provide educational lessons on what a therm is and a kilowatt hour to others and why that's important. But certainly, dollars tend to speak loudly with others. And speaking of which, Michael, I'm curious to hear from you because your background really big on cost management for a lot of your roles and experience.
Yes.
Yes. So can you speak on that?
Sure, sure. Well, I think, what I was going to, I think one of the things I really learned is that, not every organization views things with the same importance, and even on the cost management side, the cost side, in terms of, looking at the different organizations inside, the accounting versus property management folks or facility management folks. So I'm trying to understand who is going to be driven by which part of the data, and it's usually the accounting or CFO is going to be driven by the cost, and the cost reductions. I think, and that was one of the biggest lessons I learned too. And like I said, it's interesting on the real estate side of things. A publicly traded company is very, very interested in sustainability. Private companies, not so much. So it's really knowing who your audience is and tailoring what you're saying. What aspects and benefits of the system will motivate them.
Yeah, for sure. And something at least that I've seen throughout my career is that the focus is all in reduction, but the metric has changed. Years ago it was focused on use reduction to get a means to cost reduction. And then well, we actually want to focus on cost because that's more important than use. So we want to focus on cost saving initiatives, which can be different than how to save on use. And Michael, something that you touched on, a lot of organizations today want to focus on carbon reduction. A lot of times the main piece of information is all the same. It's your utility use and cost, and then applying a factor, but still it's depending on what your main focus is, it's still the same bits of data are the same. But it's just, different stakeholders have focused on it, in different ways over the years.
Yeah, and as being a third party provider, I have to understand who it is that we're talking to, and whether they're going to be what's going to motivate and drive them. And it kind of going back to what Joyce was saying too. Even to all the energy managers and folks here, young folks, you're all salespeople. Everybody is you have to sell. You have to approach it that way, that you have to sell your project and your data, because they may not understand it or view it the same way.
I think it's a really good point. You do have to sell. Joyce, did you find that in your career working with those that just weren't that interested in energy?
Yes, all the way up to the president, right? So I think data decision making is part of your analysis and your custom tailored use of the Energy Cap product. Monthly data is static data. So the more you could break it down into intervals, the more frequency, by department, by division, and providing that dashboard to your users will help them to help you to justify sort of all the time and effort that you're putting into and getting the data correct. I always thought of it as at 7:30, 8:30 in the morning, when one of my coworkers sat down with a cup of coffee. What do I want to make sure that we're putting in front of them that's going to help them do their job?
Yeah. Heidi, curious from your standpoint, as you go to retire, what are some of the, call it key reports, key, workflows that you need to transition to others to make sure that Colorado State University is still being managed properly?
We are working on trying to figure out better ways to present our data. We're unique in that we pretty much work in the department, and I have a bunch of engineers, and they want the data all the way down to the nitty gritty. They like to dive in deep, and we're all kind of nerds when it comes to data. And then we learn to massage it to put that data further up the ladder and the chain. But again, I agree with Michael and with Joyce that you have to know your audience and who you're presenting the data to. And, is a graphical representation easier for somebody to digest and notice, or table, or maybe you just put it in an email. That probably was one of the hardest things that I had to learn, is to accommodate my data, because we all love our data. We're nerds. We love our data. We want to talk about it for days on end. And you can see people's eyes glass over and you've lost them. So you do have to know your audience. I found it very interesting when, I tell people that I work with utility bills and utility rates, stupid things about utility rates, and they're not very interested until they get the home bill that's, $500, and they're like, what happened? And then suddenly it becomes kind of interesting to them. We've been unique in our program here because sustainability and conservation has always been a focus. We've always metered our buildings because we always knew that if we can measure it, we can conserve, we can make things better in the building, and we can look at it holistically. And so our sustainability efforts grew out of facilities management. We always had that focus, and bring other people along the line. But some, at least universities I've talked to, are growing their sustainability efforts, and they're like, how do I do it? And it's like, you got to make friends with your facilities management folks. You got to put on sub-metering. If you don't measure it, you can't do anything intelligent with your information.
Yeah. One theme I think that we would all agree on is better access to data is great. Having interval data, especially, is very key in making informed decisions and tracking progress. So really respect Colorado State for the mindset of installing your own sub meters as best you can, so you can be more in the know of what's going on minute to minute rather than month to month.
Yes.
We're going to go to another poll question. So we want to hear from all of you. This panel was just talking about some of the larger challenges they faced. So we're going to open up another poll question and hear from all of you. Select one of these. What's the biggest challenge you're currently facing? And I realize maybe it's something else. For some of us, it's our NFL teams are out of the playoffs. That could be the biggest challenge mentally. But and if you're Bill and you live in the Pacific Northwest,
Exactly.
maybe your team in the Super Bowl is the best thing. But from all of you, what's your biggest challenge out? If you had to pick one of these, what would it be? Heidi was touching on something about rising utility rates, or just utility rates in general. And I think, that is a central theme among this group that I think everyone here collectively agrees that really is a challenge. It's something you can't control, but you have to manage it. And that's maybe very frustrating if it's something that you really have little to no control over, but it affects you and impacts you and your performance. It's really a difficult thing. But there are options. So please fill that out. And I think we'll close this here in another couple seconds. And let's see the results. All right. Can everyone see the results, by the way?
Yes.
I know I can see it. Great. I think this is great. So the top item is ailing and aging infrastructure. I know this group is probably a more higher ed and education, and so that's not that much of a surprise, at least to me. Heidi, I'm sure to you, it's probably not a surprise.
No, not at all.
Yeah, yeah, and that comes with its own challenges. So certainly get that. Lack of supervisor buy-in to projects. I think Joyce, that was something you were touching on a bit. In your world, energy management's important, but not everyone agrees on that, and you have to go fight and get funding. Lack of funding being another big item. Certainly understand that. Probably never enough funding for what you want to do. Let's see, rising utility rates, don't have accurate, good data, and no access to real-time data, something we were just touching on. Any of the panelists want to comment on the results of this at all?
Yeah, this is Bill on the aging infrastructure. You know, and as we've all kind of talked about, is just meaningful metrics in the right hands, and trying to convince CFOs is different than trying to convince somebody that's trying to make the buildings work or industrial process work, are two different audiences. And so looking at just benchmarking, for instance, from an energy accounting program, monthly bills, that's how you make the case that our infrastructure is old and it's costing us a lot of money. So if I'm in an office building, for instance, and it's 100,000 BTUs per square foot, that's incredibly high. And so you can start to use that information to say, what if we just got it to 75? I mean, you should be able to operate at 50,000 BTUs per square foot, but that starts to put some parameters around some savings opportunities. If we got down to there by replacing some of this equipment, this is how much we could save on our bills. And with bills going up and utility rates going up, that only gets bigger over time. So trying to use that information that you've got to get it into the right hands of the decision makers that can help you replace some of that infrastructure, and then put that into an organized way. If you've got several different sites, you use the same information and say, these sites we need to focus on the worst and can save us the most amount of money, I think helps address some of those things, and at least get some support from internal people that can control the funding and process.
Yeah, and where have you seen Energy Star and Portfolio Manager help there?
When we were at Clear Result, we had a program where we went and benchmarked mainly school districts, all of their facilities, and we would go get Energy Star scores in addition to just, BTUs per square foot metrics, and put all those things together. And that really helped, because you're looking at a national database of things, and we would put it on a sliding scale, and here's where you are. Here's where the range is, and here's where the median is, and here's where you could potentially get to. And so it really helped, not just your opinion, but here's a national database of building performance, and here's where we are. Was very enlightening for a lot of those folks.
Yeah, yeah, and I realize for many, buildings aren't rateable, right? Because they're, especially campus level buildings, just being the uniqueness. But I still think, the metric you're talking about, Bill, is understanding your normalized use per area. You can look at some general standards, at least ranges that are reasonable, and benchmark against it.
John,
And that's what.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
I will step in and say, this aging infrastructure, most of this equipment or utilities are out of sight, out of mind for the general populace. Underground utilities, mechanical rooms that are off, nobody has access to. So these are the unseen and unsexy parts of buildings. And so it's a lot of times very difficult for people to understand that these parts and pieces need to be replaced more so than the carpet or painting or, the more visible pieces of it. And sometimes, and what we're working on right now is to describe the risk of not doing, working on these and fixing them and bringing them up to date. So one thing is, business as usual costs the university more, so we can't continue that. And we need to also say, okay, if this air handling equipment goes down, this building, it can't be occupied during the summertime because it's too hot. So I think if there's a risk component that gets added to this analysis, That kind of brings it home to folks at higher levels making decisions, funding decisions and whatnot, of what could happen.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah.
jump in. I'd like to jump in on this one too. The poll said, uh, we are experiencing a lack of funding, but I think the panelists are also talking about the distribution of funding, because it's always more, if you're at a campus, you want to attract more students, right? So if you had remodeled dormitories, that is going to bring in more students than replacing that 40-year-old boiler. So it really is a tough sell. My current challenge at the moment is that we are very dependent on utility grade power in this country, and although it's ramping up, the distributed energy and sort of behind the utility meter power that you would own is hopefully going to become a better resource for us in the next 10 years, or at least help to add people to the portfolio so that you can be ready and more resilient in the case of a blackout or a brownout. It's not something that's highly discussed like microgrids and DER, but I think that conversation is going to come out, and you could use energy cap and sort of in the same way you would getting a utility bill. It's just that now it's a bill that you generate.
Yeah, 100% there. I think one of the items that is pretty regularly in the news is just about data center growth and the impacts that have on the grid. And so it's good to start thinking about other solutions there and how to mitigate that. And that also then spikes, rise in utility costs and other things. So you have dependency when in a stress system and then rising costs, none of which you can control. So taking control is really valuable. We were both of you were talking about really the next discussion item, which is where do organizations most often lose time or money without realizing it? Which, just kind of an interesting point. Michael, let me look at you and see what your thoughts are here.
Sure. Yeah, I think and I think this is again where like energy cap and Bill, a couple of these examples may go back to our time together. I'm not sure. It gets fuzzy after 25 years. But I think one thing that energy cap can help you do with analyzing the data and analyzing your costs is utilities don't always put you on the right rate or tariff, and they don't bill correctly. And one of my favorite ones was we found an Outback Steak house. It was a house on a residential rate. So and a Pepsi bottling plant that was paying sewer on every gallon of water that went into the plant. So most of that was $1 million a year saving. Wow. So this is some low-hanging fruit that system energy cap, and if you're processing your bills, I've talked about, I think somebody laughed when I said that processing paying utility bills is a necessary evil to get your data, but you can find these kinds of things in the data, and it's quite frankly free money, for a lot of these things.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, and in your world, I think where a lot of organizations that I've seen, they lose time and money and they don't have a good grasp of it. It's just processing of data, right? If you ask an organization, how much does it cost you to process a utility bill? Most people are like, well, it's free. Like it's part of someone's job. It's like, well, yeah, I get it. But there's costs associated with staffing, with just all the things necessary. And really, when you look at the full life cycle of receiving a utility bill, processing it, paying it, there's a lot that goes in there. And most organizations don't understand what the costs are, like the hidden costs just to perform that action, let alone finding some of the things that you just talked about, Michael. And again, in your career, you've worked on solving this problem with customers. So where are some areas that you've seen customers realizing savings in some of these areas that they didn't realize when they were first starting?
Well, I mean, I think, you're dead on. I mean, the cost to process, a utility bill, I haven't looked it up lately, but I think it's usually in the $15 to $20 range for most organizations, when you look at it all in. And, again, I think the opportunity, embracing technology and embracing third parties, to do some of these functions so that your organization can do the things that are, that are more, more productive for you. So I think there's opportunity to save, not just energy, but also in like labor costs, and then late fees. You need to look at how much late fees are being charged. I remember we had one customer who was paying, I think it was about $100,000 a year in FedEx charges to try to avoid late charges and shutoffs. So, so you have to factor all of these costs into, the savings that you're getting by putting in a program like that.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you this question. So, helpful to streamline operations if you have a lot of buildings getting built by utility companies. Something you said earlier, which is very common for university campuses, is you have a few entry points of utilities onto campus, and then you're doing district energy. You have district energy plants, and you're distributing out. So really, the challenge is not, say, the processing and management of the vendor utility bill. It's all the distribution around campus. How is the university realize some savings by investing in more smart meters, AMI meters to make meter reading and building use and cost allocation more streamlined?
First of all, I will say that, your utility accountant is going to be your first line of defense in screening bills from vendors. Everybody thinks they're just going to be standard, boring work, but it's just not. There's misapplied payments, there's, late fees, that sort of thing. So I will defend my utility accountant for sure. But then we have internal customers that we bill. We have what we call auxiliary customers that they have their own source of revenue, so we must bill them. And again, you would think the sub-metering environment would be straightforward, but sometimes we might have a boiler that feeds hot water to 2 different buildings. So how do we allocate those? Prior to older versions of Energy Cap, which was Phasor, doing that math was easier to do almost in a spreadsheet because it was a SQL script that you had to maintain, all that sort of thing. So it's much easier to do it in Energy Cap now. All that math is done internal to the program. So we used to have, one electrician that would spend 3 days going to our 3 different campuses to read electric meters. And we had 2 women that would read the gas, water, steam, and chill water meters. It was a huge effort every single month. And it was not particularly consistent in the timing. They might read it on the 24th of the month, and then maybe you have the holidays, so it's the 3rd of the month following. Now that we have smart meters deployed, we can pull those meter readings down on the 1st of the month every single time. There might be a handful that we have to go and read manually or pull down a reading manually, but then that particular smart meter company has allowed us to develop a program, a text file that we can import into Energy Cap all of our meter readings. So, used to be a meter book, we would calculate those by hand. We'd actually put in the monthly use, not the meter reading. So I had 3 students at one time doing that. So the manpower by deploying smart meters and the combination of the smart meter and Energy Cap has gone down tremendously. And the data is much more reliable by doing this more automatically. And, now we can concentrate on more important things like processing bills or creating bills or just being able to answer the question, how much energy did you think this particular building used? We can use some intelligent allocation. If we got a meter metering more than one building, we can add a bunch of buildings together and then split them off for customers. It's just a much more static and reliable and defendable process than it used to be.
Yeah, I'm going to transition to the next theme, but building off of something you said, Heidi. So, being more proactive rather than reactive, it takes a bit of an investment. It
Yes.
sounds like on your campus, and better, more smarter meters.
Mhm.
But Bill, I'm going to ask you this question because Bill's built numerous education programs throughout the years, and you might want to talk about those, ECM program and stuff at AEE, because some of the younger, less experienced on this call might be interested in some of those for continued education. But I would think some of that you've built is trying to help teams be more proactive rather than reactive,
Yes.
so you can spot problems earlier, rather than react to something that's catastrophic that then takes down a building, for a period of time.
Yeah, one of the most effective things that we did in this resource conservation manager program was I was able to work with our meter data warehouse at the utility company and grab data. If you don't know how AMR meters work, they're generally feeding from a building to the pole top after midnight, between midnight and 2 or 3 in the morning. They're read between about 2 o'clock and 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. They go to a meter data warehouse. I was able to grab the data before it went through the validation process, which still has a few little lumps and bumps, but not much, and get them to send a feed to the building operators, or to the commercial customers by about 7 o'clock in the morning. So as Joyce was saying, people sit down, have their cup of coffee, look at the AMR data, the 15-minute pulse data from the day before. It's not like it's a week later. You have the memory of what happened this yesterday. And so you could look at it and then teach them what they're looking for in that data. So we had even custodians that would be interested. You don't want to force it on people, but you find a person in most sites that want to look at that. And so we found things, just looking at the pulse data, buildings that are not shutting down at night, buildings that are heating up or cooling down too early in the day. Just looking at the in the morning, just looking at the pulse data, you can see when a building is starting to come to temperature. And a lot of them, they're coming to temperature 2 hours before anybody even gets in the building. You can see it flatten out and level off and then start to degrade. Then they've got to do it again. Not the full lift, but let's delay that. We found chillers that weren't shutting off because of a power outage. Power came back on, went to a default mode, of which chiller is on. We assume you're hot. We're just going to turn it on and let it go. And no one knew until I got a high bill complaint from the utility, went out to investigate, looked at the AMR data and said, something's not shutting down. You're just running all night long, all the time, that you didn't used to. And so what changed? And we figured out it was the chiller, a big train chiller, just the default mode in failure going on. So you can get ahead of things. You can benchmark buildings using AMR data that not a lot of people are aware of. You look at enough of it. I looked at lots and lots of facilities, and like a school building should be able to get down to about a half a watt per square foot at night. And then multiply that by the square footage and say, hey, this 30,000 square foot elementary school should be no more than 15 kW at night. What's it running at? And then you start asking why. Why is this where it is? Sometimes there's an answer. We may have a bigger data center in a commercial building where you don't in another one. That's fine. But a commercial office building, for instance, should be able to get down to about 1 watt per square foot. So you start looking at these trends and spotting the anomalies beforehand before it gets out of control. Really helps you stay ahead of, and that's just building operations stuff, a lot of it. It's not equipment failures or costly things. It's just a matter of scheduling and giving them data and giving someone the time to look at it early in the morning. Doesn't take a long time. One person can look through a whole school district in about 15 minutes if you've got easy access to the data and it's easy to navigate to and see. That was one of the most successful things I think that we found to deal with some of these and get ahead of the problems.
Yeah, certainly appreciate the value of, but you got to have meters. You got to make the investment to get it if you can't get it from the utility. And not
Yes,
every
exactly.
utility is
Yeah,
the same.
I was fortunate that we had
Yeah.
a progressive utility and we had the AMR system, and they were willing to fund it. to get that going. But I tied it to the RCM program. So, all right, we'll give you this data if you participate in this behavioral program. And, we'll give you an energy cap program if you agree to put data into it and maintain it and put all your facility information in. So it was always this give and take, but we gave them an opportunity to participate in it. If you just participate fully in it, we'll give you these things that are value add. And it was a win-win right off the bat. And so it made a huge difference.
But
Yeah.
John, I've seen the metering and communication technology has advanced so much, and the cost of the communication has dropped. So I mean, basically, we're basically putting a cellular device on individual water meters now and talking directly. The cost of moving data has gotten so low. So it's I guess that's the benefit of being around so long, is we've really seen the technology.
Yeah, and we've seen some of the nightmare examples. So history is not always a great predictor of the future. So let's just look at water. I think that's one of the best examples. You get a bill from the utility company every other month, and you're surprised when that bill that's usually $150 all of a sudden was $3,000 because there was a leak, or there's there's something could immediately go wrong with water. So encouraging everyone to be an energy champion in your organization, and to really look for things that they could spot, see something, say something, and bring that back to you as the person that overall is responsible for the utility bills. Just try to get everybody in your team keeping their eyes open.
I think keeping your eyes open is really, really big. One of our first success stories of spotting a water problem was in a large school district on the East Coast. To get into Bill's point about benchmarking water meters against one another. And there were two that were just outliers, using way more than everything else. It was like high schools were draining the pool and then refilling it on a regular basis. And it's like, what is going on here? In just a walkthrough in a janitor's closet, in both situations, faucet turned on, water dumping right down the drain. So you're getting hit for water and sewer. And it just was going. Someone's like, oh, it's supposed to be doing that. So no one turned it off. But just a good example where it doesn't take a genius to know what's going on there, as long as you have the data, but also someone that can hopefully spot the problem and tell someone so you can look into it further.
Yeah, and that can go deeper too, John. I've had a school district that was using a tremendous amount of water while they were building a new building. And they say, well, it's kind of swampy around here. So now it got into the cost of putting a foundation around this building. They had to dig deeper footings. They had to waterproof and everything else. And we started looking at the water. It's like, you're dumping swimming pools full of water. I think we calculated the size of a football field, maybe 10 feet deep of water every month. And it turned out to be a water leak, and it saved on building. They were ready to put in more building costs because of the swampy area, only because they had a leak and didn't realize it. Just crazy. Somebody's got to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Let's transition a bit here, because I want to talk about relationships with other teams. And Joyce, I want to ask you about this, because in your career, you've had to navigate on the commercial side and now on the government side. And also you're a consultant. And so you kind of have to deal with multiple departments. What have you done in your career to help build relationships among different stakeholder groups, mainly facilities, finance, sustainability, and carbon reporting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always worked on sort of the energy management side of things, and but there would be people in my organizations that were responsible for sustainability reporting. So reporting is like an entirely different thing than operations management, and the two needed to respect each other, to understand each other, to understand that I'm the person actually going to contribute to your report, right? So but keeping those communication channels with your, with your sustainability person, with your CFO, who's looking at the overall budget, and then those responsible for, say, capital investments in your facility. You really work as a triangle of professionals in order to improve the bottom line.
And Heidi, how about you navigating a university campus, all the different stakeholders on campus, different departments?
Um,
How have you been successful over your career?
let's put that in perspective of how successful we've been. It's depends on, what we're doing. But like I said before, we grew the sustainability efforts out of the facilities management group. We had an energy or a mechanical engineer, that was her passion. She really brought sustainability and solar to the campus. So we grew it out. And so, she was kind of the instigator of the President's Sustainability Committee. So she was really the key person that got agreements with ACCUPAC and, benchmarking, sustainability reporting, stars, and getting buy-in that way. The money hasn't always been forthcoming, but she was successful in creating a revolving energy fund, so that we can get about $1 million to invest each year in different projects. Some of that low-hanging fruit is going away, but because we pursue then rebates with another individual, we're getting rebates from our utility companies, and that money is often going right back into that revolving fund. So we keep it active and keep it going. So that, it really was kind of an overall ethos in the department, but also a champion in the department as well, who was brash enough to push it and push and push until she got what she wanted with that.
Yeah, thanks. One of the items here, one of your counterpart campuses, not too far down the road, years ago, we've been working with the finance team there on, what you had talked about earlier, the cost allocation and finance reporting for utilities around campus. We were there, another coworker and I, we were training their finance team, and then their facilities team came in and said, "Hey, we just like to learn more about this program." And they said, "Well, we do EUI reporting. You guys can't do that, can you?" Of course we can. That's a fundamental thing that can be reported on. Well, how did we know about it? Well, I don't know. Have you ever been brought into discussions with finance about reporting? And it always struck me as for those that everyone gets narrow-minded, and sometimes it's good to bring others in. If you're using the same data in various ways, it's good to at least have the discussion to say, how can we use it together?
Yes.
Because chances are you're probably managing the same bit of data in different systems.
I will add a caveat to that. How you design your database, your utility database, is completely dependent on who's at the front of that. So it really needs to be at the very beginning, to know who all is going to be using the data, because then you can design something that can meet all those needs. Otherwise, you will be very narrow and siloed. You'll be missing pieces of data that are useful to another group. Finance and accounting, they don't care about consumption. Your energy engineers care about consumption, really don't care about the money, but clearly they both need to go together if you're going to achieve a sustainability effort.
Yep. And Heidi's redesigned hers a few times just to change with growing business needs. Yeah.
Right.
We're running up on time. I want to leave this last question, and I'm going to go round robin, so everyone just kind of think about it. I'll start with Michael. We'll start with you. If you could give one piece of advice to the audience today, what would it be?
And I actually, the thing I had for this question I brought up earlier, and that is really, you're not, remember, you're a salesperson, and I'm going to go ahead and say it again because I think it's important. You have to approach it and remember that throughout your career, that when you want to get things done in the organization, approach it like you're trying to sell the rest of the people on your idea or on what needs to happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent one for sure. Like, yes, you're probably an engineer, you have the technical background, but you got to work on salesmanship and marketing to be able to sell programs, to get funding, all those things. And by the way, don't be scared to ask others for help there. You should be in a community. There's the APA community and others out there that, others have gone through the same challenges and probably have some PowerPoints and resources to help. Heidi, let's go to you next.
I will still go back. You got to have the data. You can't really move forward unless you know where to put your efforts. Where's your best bang for the buck? And you got to have data to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah. Shameless plug for Energy Cap. Great at managing data. But I mean, I think that the point being consolidated database with good systems to get data in, to audit, to make sure it's good so you can trust the reporting is really important there.
Yes.
Yeah. Bill, you next.
I think don't overlook the potential of operational and behavioral types of savings. The way I describe that is the fruit you stepped over to get to the low-hanging fruit. So this is the fruit that's already on the ground. And people overlook that. The custodians can kill you or make you a hero. Nobody thinks to engage them. Something that I heard recently that never occurred to me is, during the pandemic, you had a bunch of empty buildings. You hired a bunch of people. Everyone's used to working at home. A friend of mine told me he was talking to one of his staff people. She had never worked in a commercial building, spent her entire career working from home. And now there's a push to get people back in the buildings. People don't know how to relate to buildings. And so you have an opportunity, and particularly younger people are much more amenable to suggestions like, here's how you turn the lights on. Here's what it's not going to be if you come in the window in the evenings or a weekend or something like that. You can expect these temperatures. It ain't going to be where you're used to when you come in the week. Things like that of just helping them engage with the building, and I think there's a huge potential for that.
Yeah, great visual of stepping over fruit to pick the low-hanging fruit. I love that. Joyce, round us out here.
I would say do a strengths finder test and play to your strengths. So you may be a marketing person, an engineer, an analyst, a buyer, an accountant, whatever your skill set is. Don't be afraid to delegate or collaborate with others. Just if it's not in your wheelhouse, ask somebody else to help you.
That's great. Great words of wisdom there. We're going to be ending this webinar. If you have put any comments in the chat or asked questions, we're going to receive those. We will respond to you. We do ask for one more bit of feedback from you. Yes, this is sponsored by Energy Cap. If those of you that aren't using Energy Cap want to learn more, please let us know. Always happy to engage. But really appreciate your attendance today and listening to everyone. I also appreciate all the panelists. All four of you, really appreciate all of you, and hopefully you know that by now. But really respect what you've done over your careers. We certainly welcome and wish Heidi welcome to retirement, and wish you all the best playing golf or whatever it is you're going to do. If anyone has questions, get in touch with the Energy Cap team. We do have one more webinar coming up next week after Punxsutawney Phil probably sees his shadow, and we're going to have more winter. But here in the cold winter, just feel free to attend more of our webinars. We're trying to put out good content for you. Appreciate everyone's time today. Stay safe, stay warm.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. And from APA as well, thank you for joining us, everybody, today. Please check out a replay of this webinar at our Vimeo page, or if you want to see the whole archive, you can link up to that at apa.org/webinars. Thanks again, and we'll see you for the next one. Thank you all, panelists. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.